This summer, after Meat passed away, we felt like we needed a change of pace. So we headed to Europe for 5 weeks. In the next 6 videos, we're going to take you along as we explore Frankfurt, Germany, Vilnius, Lithuania, Riga, Latvia, Tallinn, Estonia, Stockholm, Sweden, and Vienna, Austria, before heading back to Mexico City and continuing on our Mexican adventures. We hope that you enjoy this holiday break from our regular programming. Welcome to Estonia. After a 3-hour train ride, a 1-hour layover, and then an 1.5-hour bus ride, we have finally made it to the second biggest city in Estonia, Tartu. And as you can see behind me, it is absolutely beautiful. But since all we've had all day is a bag of grilled bacon lays, I think we're gonna find some food first.
Here the garlic fried bread was yummy, but still couldn't hold a candle to Lithuania's version. I got the burger and Georgia got the bachelor's hash. Both were good, but the atmosphere and beer were awesome. So yesterday we ended up spending most of the evening at the Gunpowder Pub, which according to Guinness is supposed to be the highest pub in the world, but I found that very doubtful.
But we took a picture of the sign anyway, so here it is. This morning we went and grabbed some coffee, and we are off to do as much sightseeing as possible because this is our only full day here in Tartu.
Behind us now is Tartu University. It was founded in 1632.
This university is consistently ranked in the top 200 in all of Europe, and it's the only one in the Baltics that is. I also do believe that it is the oldest university in the Baltics. Since this town is a college town, there are tons of bars and restaurants and cafes, and so far we've seen they've been pretty reasonably priced, especially compared to Riga.
Our next stop was Purgov Park.
There is a hill in the center of the park that you can climb up. It gives you some very nice views of the city, and there is also a kind of cool stone monument behind me, as well as what used to be for Tartu University, the astronomical observatory. We're going to continue and see if there's anything else on the hill.
This is the old anatomical theater. Unfortunately, there is a bunch of construction and we can't enter it. Check it out. So we're currently on top of the north tower of the old Tartu Cathedral.
This cathedral obviously used to be used for services, but then there was a fire and they never bothered to reconstruct it or use it as a cathedral again. It is really cool to walk around. They do have a museum, which we haven't visited yet, but as David said, we did climb up the towers. It is quite a few steep steps, but the combo ticket is €10 each for both the museum and the towers.
So we just finished up the University Museum, which is attached to that old cathedral. Pretty interesting. It's a lot of information about the college itself, and also some of the experiments you can kind of look at, kind of like a children's science center type thing.
They did explain some of the history of the church itself. It was apparently destroyed in the Livonian War.
Which I know all about that.
It's kind of one of those things when you start traveling that you realize how much you don't know about history. So I don't actually know what the Livonian War is, but it took down the cathedral. At one point, they were going to restore the whole thing and make it the college, but they ended up just doing this part, which is now the museum, but was the library for years.
So we just finished an absolutely delicious lunch at campus.
It is a food hall. From what I saw, there were 3 different restaurants to choose from. There was like an Indian, kind of like a poke bowl Asian, and then there was a burger bar. So of course we went for the burger bar. We got the double bacon burger with salted caramel sauce.
Yeah, that was really different and very good.
Yeah, it sounds weird, but it was really, really good. And then we also got loaded fries that had garlic sauce and cheese and a crumbled up beef patty on top. And we were able to get 2 of our new favorite beers, Grimbergen. And it was all a very reasonable price as well. Now we're headed to one more church and then hopefully to a museum.
So we just finished up here at the Estonia National Museum, which actually used to be a Soviet airstrip back in the day.
Yeah, they actually built the building to where it kind of like blends in and kind of looks like it's taking off from the airstrip. The museum actually had 3 different exhibits. One of them was the kind of permanent exhibit that goes over all of like Estonian history. It covers like pop culture, different things. My favorite part was all of the traditional clothing.
That's interesting.
It really is. You see some traditional clothing still being worn in parts of Mexico by indigenous people, but generally in Europe you don't get to see any of it, so it was neat to see it all in a museum setting. Another really cool thing in this museum is that they gave us an English ticket, and so whenever we went to one of the electronic placards, we could scan our ticket and it would instantly translate it from Estonian to English, which was really neat. The second exhibit was, I think, your favorite.
The language thing.
Yeah, so they went and they were talking about the origins of the language here, which apparently is closely related to Finnish, even though ancestrally they're more related to like Latvians. So I thought that part was interesting. Another cool exhibit that they had was all of this string art that they had like in a room with like black lights, and it was kind of
very disco.
Yeah, it was really very very techno, I think is the word. So that was pretty neat. But I think definitely the first exhibit, the permanent exhibit, was the most interesting. And like I said, it did cover everything from like almost like the Neanderthal origins with arrowheads and stuff like that, all the way to modern culture, songs, TV, that kind of thing. Oh, one other thing I thought was really neat was apparently for a long time Estonian was actually only spoken by the peasants. All the rich people actually went to school in Germany and spoke German. All business transactions and books were all written in German, which I thought was interesting too. Well, after walking the over 2 kilometers back to town, we decided that we deserved a drink, and we got these giant mojitos. David got the mango chili, and I got the honeydew melon. She did a solid like 10 to 12 count on the rum. They are very strong. They're not too sweet. and we have a really great view of the river, so I do highly recommend this place. So this morning we checked out of our hotel in Tartu, and we took a 2.5-hour train direct to Tallinn. We are just like a little over a kilometer from the train station, so we grabbed a Bolt and checked into our Airbnb. And then we went out to try to find some food, and we got caught in the rain again. This is a reoccurring theme here in the Baltic countries. But we are currently at Grill House Restaurant, which looks quite fancy, and we have ordered the shared meat experience, which has basically a bunch of different meats on it. So looking forward to it.
So yesterday I went to a nearby hotel to pick up the 72-hour Tallinn card.
The Tallinn card allows you unlimited use of the city's public transportation, as well as entrance for free into like 90 different museums and attractions. So we've gotten up nice and early today to try to take the biggest advantage possible of this pass. Well, our first stop of the day is the Maritime Museum, which is located in this giant tower behind me that is known as Fat Margaret because it is the largest tower that lines the city walls. So our first stop of the day was that Maritime Museum, which I found really interesting. Each floor was a different type of ship. It started with the ancient ships and went all the way up to motorized ships at the top. And then the very top was actually a little terrace where you got a really good view of the city. Unfortunately, it was raining, so we didn't spend much time up there. What was your favorite part?
It was the cog. It was like a really old ship. I think they found it was like over 1,000 years old, and pretty well in pretty good shape for being that old. And they kind of had it suspended in the bottom floors of the museum.
Then we went to the Great Guild, which that museum was really cool. My favorite part was some of the really ancient money. They had money that was like from the 700s, 900s. I thought that was really cool. What else was in there?
We had a drunk tank. I thought that was kind of funny.
Oh, yeah. So the guild used to hold like big parties, and then they had their original drunk tank.
Yeah, anybody who harassed the young ladies, they would get thrown in the drunk tank, and I guess it was pretty embarrassing to do that.
Our next stop is the church behind us, which is a Lutheran church that was built in the 13th century. So I'm really excited to see it. I will say the first museum was €15 a person, and then the Great Guild was €12 a person, and I think that church is €2 a person. So those Tallinn cards are already really adding up to some savings.
We are currently in the sauna tower of the city wall.
This tower is attached by a section of the wall to two other towers, for a total of 3 that you can go in. It was free with the Tallinn card, but it would have been €3 each without it. It is absolutely downpouring right now, but the great thing is that this city wall is actually a covered walkway, so we're going to go explore.
After the rain slowed down, we headed to Tallinn's main market to get some well-deserved food and drink. So we decided to stop for lunch at the market, and we got some amazing dumplings.
Yeah, the flavors that we got were duck and thyme and lamb and garlic. They were really, really fantastic. We walked around the market some. We even bought some chocolates from a local chocolate factory. And then on the top floor, there's a brewery. So we stopped at the brewery and we had...
dark and amber ales.
Yes, and we also enjoyed Estonia's version of the fried garlic bread. Theirs comes with a sour cream and chive sauce. I still have to say that I like Lithuania's version the best, but I do think Estonia's did slightly edge out Latvia's version. So they're all different and all worth trying. We have now walked into this very artsy little district. There are lots of lots of wall art, and then there is actually a huge photography museum.
So Fotografiska is a lot smaller than you would think.
Yeah, especially for the 17 euro per person price tag. There were only actually 2 floors of exhibits. The second floor had this very like pop art style of photography, and it was really, really cool, and I did really enjoy it. The third floor had 2 exhibits. One was kind of like with the play of light and actual negatives.
Mostly black and white, yeah.
Yeah. And then there was one exhibition which was just photographs of a family where the daughter had Down syndrome. So I think if you're really into photography and you have the Tallinn pass, it's definitely worth coming. But if you don't have the Tallinn pass, I wouldn't pay 17 euro each for it.
So after Fotografiska, we took a train and then a bus to the Seaplane Museum.
This was actually a German seaplane hangar that was taken over by Estonia in 1918 after World War I. And for the public transportation, we actually were able to use our Tallinn card, so that was free. And the entrance to this museum was also free, which normally it is 15 euro per person, but you can get a family ticket for just 30.
In the center of this museum, you'll find a military submarine which you are allowed to climb down into and explore. So another cool thing about this museum is they have these actual boats out here that you can go on. It kind of reminds me of my Navy days a little bit. All the really steep ladders and all the engine equipment.
One was a buoy tender from the U.S. Coast Guard that was donated to Estonia, and then the ship behind us is an icebreaker.
So we just finished up at the Seaplane Harbor Museum.
I would say that it is definitely worth it. It was one of my top two things that we did today. There also is an AI museum close to here where they have a bunch of the VR type headsets, and it's just about like inventions and robotics and kind of where all that's going. We were gonna do that, but honestly at this point the sun's coming out. It has been rainy and dreary all day, and I would just like to sit in the sun and get a drink.
After our cocktails with a view, we headed back into the Old Town to grab dinner at one of Tallinn's most popular restaurants. Today is our second day exploring with our Tallinn card.
And our first stop is the church behind me here, which is St. Nicholas's Orthodox Church. Unfortunately, since it is an Orthodox church, we can't film inside.
So behind us now is St. Catherine's Passage, which is one of the oldest streets in Tallinn.
And to my right is a display of tombstones that date back to the 1300s. At the end of this alley is the Dominican convent, which hopefully we'll get to go in and explore.
Unfortunately, the Dominican convent isn't open this early in the morning. So first off was the Orders of Knighthood Museum, which was more like awards and stuff, like you saw the kind of medals that countries give out, and it was €12 per person.
Of course, it was free for the Tallinn card, so we didn't have to pay anything. Our next stop is one of the oldest continually operated pharmacies in all of Europe. I believe it was opened in the 1400s.
So after the pharmacy, which had a lot of weird specimens that were used as drugs over the years, we went to the town hall.
The town hall actually is kind of two parts. The tower is €4 per person, and then the museum was €5 per person, which of course, again, free with the Tallinn card. The museum part was really cool. They had restored most of the halls and rooms of the town hall, which from what I read was built in the very early 1400s and one of the oldest remaining town halls in all of Europe, and the oldest in Northern Europe, since it dates back to the medieval times.
We were starving, so we ordered the King's Feast, which you'll see comes with everything.
All right, so here we have the baked cheese We have onion jam, and we have duck liver pate. We have pickles. We have a creamed cheese. We have a green hummus. We have a smoked and salted salmon. We have these giant olives, and then we have fresh white and brown bread. All right, so the main course has arrived. We have turnips. We have lentils. We have sauerkraut. We have pureed parsnips, and we have spelt. We also have salmon with wild mushroom sauce. We have duck leg with saffron sauce. We have sausages, which have bear meat and venison, as well as elk meat in them. And that comes with horseradish cream. And then lastly, we have the veal cheek that is in a green peppercorn sauce. And pickle on vegetables as a palate cleanser.
This church was built in the 13th century and partially destroyed by Soviet bombs during World War II. So after our delicious lunch, we headed over to St. Nicholas's Church, where we were able to ride an elevator up into the main tower. It was really cool.
Yeah, the admission is €12 per person, but of course with the Tallinn card,
free.
it was free. And honestly, I would probably skip going up in the town hall tower if you're going to do St. Nicholas's tower. One, because there's an elevator, and two, it got very crowded in the town hall tower. It's super small, where the tower of the church is big and it's kind of up on the hill, so I think you actually get a better view.
Yeah.
After that, we headed over to the Alexander Nevsky Traditional Orthodox Church. It is absolutely stunning from outside, and you do get a beautiful view of it from that church tower. The inside is actually not quite as impressive, I would say, as the outside. We made a dash for the Kick in de Coq Museum. We're going to head in and do the towers first.
In the first tower, they had a model of what the town wall looked like in the 1500s. The next tower explained how for a period the towers were actually used as apartments for the wealthy. Finally, we headed down into the tunnels, which are staged as a walk back in time, showing how most recently the tunnels were used by the homeless for shelter. In the 80s and 90s, raves and underground parties were held there, and before that they were used as bomb shelters. At the end of the tunnels, there is an exhibit of old tombstones and sculptures. You exit the tunnels into Freedom Square. Today is the last day that our Tallinn Pass is valid, and we rode public transportation for free for about 15 minutes outside of city center.
And the reason we did that is because there is a castle that has actually been turned into a history museum. And then also on this kind of side of town, there is a palace that has been turned into an art museum. So we're going to squeeze that last bit of value out of that card.
We are currently in the Soviet Monument Graveyard behind the Estonian Historical Museum.
And this is an exhibition that is free for everyone to enter, whether you have the Tallinn card or not. And it is quite cool. Apparently, after they gained their independence in the early 90s, they started taking down all of the Soviet monuments and sculptures and busts. And they kind of stored them for a while, didn't know what to do with them, and then eventually the History Museum petitioned to get them all donated and created this graveyard. And there's a plaque in the front that says to look at these statues to remember that freedom may be fleeting.
Since gaining their independence, Estonia has rebranded itself as a tech incubator.
I really liked this museum kind of focused on the first fight for independence a lot because I didn't see that as much in the others. And the other thing was that we learned that Estonia mostly was part of either Sweden or Russia for its whole history, where Latvia and Lithuania were combined with Poland to be a completely different country. So I thought that that was pretty interesting. And then of course it did go over the occupations by the Soviet, the Germans, and then the Soviets, and then their fight for freedom the second time.
So after a quick ride on public transportation and a short walk, we are in front of the palace.
The palace is surrounded by a huge park, and they have lots of cute little old buildings, and the one behind us is now a cafe. So I think we're going to run inside and grab just a little quick bite to eat, because it is a little bit past noon and I'm getting hungry. We don't want to get hangry.
Just finished up inside the museum, and now we're out back of the palace in the gardens.
The gardens are absolutely gorgeous, and it appears that they're completely free to enter because there's no ticket to get around. They're just outside. The museum inside is €9 per person. It was fairly small, but I did actually find some of the paintings very interesting and beautiful. So certainly if you're into art, it's probably worth it. The main ballroom is also super, super impressive. So we're going to continue to walk around the gardens. And then I think there's a couple more museums out here, and since the sun is still out, I think we're going to try to take advantage.
So after that palace museum is their White House, which is actually a pink house, and you can walk pretty much right up on it. Can't go inside though. And after that is the Museum of Peter the Great.
The Peter the Great Museum is extremely small, but it was his original summer house in the area. And we found information inside pretty interesting. Number one, we learned that all of this huge park, as well as the new Palace Museum that we visited first, was all his at one point. I think the other reason that we found the museum really interesting was we absolutely binge watched the show Catherine the Great. I think it was either on Hulu or Netflix, but we loved it.
sky opened up and started downpouring.
Yes, we jumped on some public transportation and we came back to the market. We absolutely loved what we ate the other day. We saw some other things that we wanted to try, so I think we're gonna eat at a couple more places, and we'll show you what we get. So one thing that I heard that you have to try while you're in Estonia is these open-faced sandwiches. They are basically rye bread topped with cream cheese and then topped with fish. So we got this one with salmon, and this one is a local fish. I believe it's called smelt, but basically it's similar to sardines. And then we got 2 cute little bottles of Prosecco.
So I wasn't really sure about those cold fish sandwiches, but they ended up being really good.
After that, we stopped by a samsa place, and basically they have these huge pastry shells that are stuffed with seasoned lamb.
Yeah.
And it came with sour
Delicious.
cream and chili sauce. Super good. Then we found a Georgian restaurant, and they had these ham and cheese, like little buns, and then they had this giant bread that was just completely stuffed with cheese. So incredibly good. Honestly, it made me want to go visit the country of Georgia. I've heard that they have really good wine too, and I could just see those 2 things going with a nice red wine.
It could have gone sweet or savory.
Yeah. And I have my eye on one last thing. I think for dessert, we're going to get some mini pancakes.
So after our meal of the day in the market, we jumped on public transportation and came to the most famous brewery in Estonia, Puujala, I think it's pronounced.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure on the pronunciation, but I read everywhere online that it is one of the only breweries in Estonia that actually exports their beer to other parts of Europe. We did 2 flights where we were able to select 5 different beers each in 100 ml pours. So we got to taste 10 different offerings.
I'm not having a glass of wine. I'm having 6. It's called a tasting and it's classy.
But they have on the main board their most famous porter, and we agreed that the most famous porter was our favorite thing. We considered a few different day trips from Tallinn. We kind of narrowed it down to either Tartu or Haapsalu, which are both destinations, beach destinations on the coast, and Haapsalu won since it has a castle.
So after about 2 hours on public transportation, we're here at Haapsalu Castle.
Well, yet again, our plans have been foiled by the apparent summer concert series here in the Baltics. I don't blame them. I know they don't get a lot of days of sun. So here we are at another castle that has been turned into a huge concert venue. But we are going to head inside and see if the museum part is open.
Well, unfortunately, it looks like we made a 2-hour bus ride for nothing.
Apparently the castle is closed today. They have a piece of paper taped over their hour sign, and so we'll have to find something else to do today.
Yeah. So at least the trails around the castle were open, and we were able to get some pretty good video of that.
Yeah, I actually did enjoy the walk around. I was really, really disappointed at first, and now I'm only halfway disappointed. After that, we kind of walked a little bit through town, and we walked down their promenade, which actually had a bird watching tower. There are tons of birds in this area. It is very kind of marshy and boggy, and so they actually had a bird watching tower.
Yeah.
We climbed to the top, and then we continued walking down the promenade, where we saw a giant swan.
Huge.
Yeah, absolutely massive. I hadn't seen a swan in person, actually, and we've also seen tons of storks here.
Yeah.
That is pretty common. But now we are getting hungry, so I think we're going to try to find a restaurant with a view.
Wow, that lunch was fantastic.
Yeah, one thing I have really noticed in this area is that the salmon is so delicious. So I actually started with the fish soup, which was a creamy soup with flaked salmon in it. Very, very yummy. I also got the salmon fillet with roasted potatoes. It was cooked to a really beautiful, like mid-rare, and came with a homemade tartar sauce. So good, so fresh.
So I got the Iberico pork, which was absolutely delicious. It was seasoned within an inch of its life, but it was amazing.
Yeah, very, very well seasoned, very, very well grilled, and very fatty.
Yeah.
Really, really delicious. We weren't as thrilled with the drink selection. I got a glass of wine that was good, and David got a beer that he didn't love. They didn't have any dark beer, so I think we're going to move on and maybe grab a drink somewhere else.
So we decided to make one more stop.
I ended up getting a couple glasses of rosé.
And I had a couple dark beers, thank God.
And they actually had mussels that were cooked in coconut milk with curry, and they were really fantastic. So we enjoyed those with this amazing marina view. But now we are going to walk back through town and make our way to the bus station. So today is our last full day in Tallinn, and we hung out at the house a little bit this morning and then kind of wandered around Old Town since it was a sunny, beautiful day. And now we're at a restaurant that we've actually tried once before. It's, I believe, Vana Willem, and it has our favorite beer, Grimbergen. And I have in front of me the schnitzel, and David has the extra, extra large pork chop. We stopped by here the other day because it is very close to the bus station. We got the cheese balls and the crispy fried pig ear with a garlic dipping sauce. So delicious that we had to come back one more time before we fly out tomorrow. So this was our Airbnb for the past week in Tallinn. You can see when you come in the front door, there's a coat closet. It's got plenty of hangers. And they have a little bench for you to put your shoes on. And behind this part of the closet here is the washer. There is not a dryer. We had to use that drying rack there for all of our clothes, but they left plenty of detergent and fabric softener. Behind this here is the fridge, and there was no dishwasher, but we did have a nice drying rack and a big sink, well-stocked cabinets, and then you can see the stovetop and oven are in the middle of the island. And this is kind of unique, but I've heard it is more common in Europe. Off of the kitchen here we have a toilet room with sink, and then over here you can see we have a nice TV, fan, little end table, L-shaped couch, and then in here is the bedroom with a good sized bed. We both had nightstands, which we definitely appreciate, and we had good heavy curtains and a shade as well. Fan in here. Really cool light fixture, by the way. And then through this door here is closet and a little dresser, and then this is like the shower room. So there is no toilet in here, but there is a sink and a really nice rainfall shower. So overall, really enjoyed the place.